There is one sentence that cuts deeper than any insult, deeper than mockery, deeper than open hatred, not because it comes from emotion, but because it doesn't come from a moment of weakness or a loss of control. It comes from intention, cold, deliberate, premeditated intention. If you've ever heard it directed at you, you weren't standing in front of someone who snapped. You were standing in front of someone who chose. Carl Jung spent his life mapping what lies beneath the human mask. Beneath the politeness, the morality, the carefully constructed persona we each wear to function in society. What he found was unsettling. He discovered that certain words don't merely express feeling. They expose psychological structure. They reveal the state of a person's inner world. And sometimes what they reveal is so dark that once you see it clearly, you can never unsee it. But before we get to the sentence itself, you need to understand the mind that speaks it. Jung believed every human being carries a shadow, the hidden parts of the psyche we reject, deny, and refuse to acknowledge. Our jealousy, our resentment, our aggression, our capacity for cruelty. The shadow itself isn't evil. Jung was clear about that. The shadow becomes dangerous only when it remains unconscious. Most people manage their shadow by burying it. They distract themselves, rationalize, avoid looking inward. They believe staying good means keeping the darkness locked away. But some people make a different choice. They don't suppress the shadow. They feed it. And when the shadow is fed instead of examined, something irreversible happens. It stops being something a person has. It becomes something a person is. Jung observed that when this shift occurs, perception itself distorts. The person no longer sees others as fully human. Instead, they see projections, mirrors of their own unresolved darkness. Your presence becomes a screen onto which they cast everything they cannot tolerate in themselves. Their rage becomes your fault. Their insecurity becomes your flaw. Their shame becomes your identity. This is projection. And projection, left unchallenged, hardens into something far more corrosive. Contempt. Contempt is not anger. Anger still acknowledges your humanity. Contempt denies it. Contempt is the settled belief that you are beneath them, unworthy of empathy, undeserving of dignity. Once contempt takes root, moral restraint erodes. The invisible social contract that prevents most people from deliberately causing harm, it simply stops applying. In their mind, you are no longer someone to protect. You are a problem to be solved. Here is the critical insight Jung offered. People who cause deliberate harm do not see themselves as cruel. They see themselves as justified. Long before the harm occurs, the mind begins preparing for it. The person builds a case against you privately, obsessively. They reinterpret your words as attacks, your boundaries as disrespect, your silence as manipulation. They collect evidence selectively. They rehearse conversations where you are always the villain and they are always the wounded party. This is not memory. This is rehearsal. The rehearsal is essential. By the time the act occurs, they have already convinced themselves it was necessary, even deserved. And then it happens. The damage is done. And something revealing often follows. The mask slips. The sentence comes out. Almost casual, almost quiet. I knew exactly what I was doing to you. Or some version of it. I meant for this to happen. I wanted you to feel this. Notice what's absent. There is no rage here. No heat. No trembling voice. These words are spoken with clarity. And that clarity is what makes them chilling. This is not a confession made in weakness. It is a declaration made from power. Jung believed that when the shadow fully takes control, it no longer hides. It wants recognition. Speaking this sentence is not about honesty. It is about dominance. The person is telling you, with precision, that your pain was intentional, calculated, and personal. They want you to know you were not spared, that your suffering was not an accident or an oversight. It was the point. But the danger rarely ends there. Because now the psyche faces a problem. A moral line has been crossed, and the ego cannot tolerate seeing itself as the villain. So it does something strategic. It reverses reality. The same person who told you they planned your suffering will now minimize it, reframe it, question your reaction. You're too sensitive. You're too dramatic. You're holding on to something that wasn't even that serious. Jung called this psychic invasion, the attempt to colonize another person's inner world with a distorted version of events. If they can make you doubt what you experienced, they don't have to face what they did. And here is something crucial. If someone gaslights you after intentional harm, they are not finished with you. What often follows is envy. Jung's work on resentment uncovered a disturbing truth. Some people do not want resolution. They want superiority. They need you to remain broken because your brokenness sustains the story they told themselves to justify the harm. Your healing threatens that story. If you recover, if you regain clarity, if you grow, if you reclaim yourself, it proves their power over you was never permanent. And for someone driven by contempt, that realization is intolerable. This is why they often return. Quietly, a message disguised as concern, a comment calibrated to reopen a wound, a rumor seeded to undermine your progress. Your suffering was supposed to neutralize their inner turmoil. When it doesn't, panic replaces satisfaction, which means your healing is not just personal. It is destabilizing to them. So what would Jung tell you to do? He never advocated revenge. Not because it's immoral, but because it keeps you tethered to the shadow of the person who harmed you. Revenge binds you. It doesn't free you. Jung believed the highest form of resistance is transformation. He wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." To integrate means to acknowledge the pain without letting it define you. To look at what happened clearly without flinching, and then to move through it, not around it. Set boundaries without cruelty. Speak truth without obsession. Walk away without carrying their poison. The person who hurt you wanted fragmentation. They wanted you scattered, confused, diminished. Wholeness is your rebellion. Healing isn't forgiveness granted to them. It is freedom claimed by you. When someone says, "I knew exactly what I was doing to you," believe them, but do not let that sentence imprison you. Let it awaken you. Jung believed our deepest wounds are often gateways to consciousness. The pain that was meant to break you can become the very thing that makes you impossible to break. They never expected you to become whole. That is precisely why your wholeness is your victory.